Welcome to the podcast. This is the first in series 2, and it is now called Journeys of Deepening Trust. And today I have with me Milena Barton. Welcome, Milena.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So we've just been having a really long conversation, which I wish we'd have recorded. Um, Milena works as a personal coach and a systems thinker. And so we were just talking about how that, in all the different ways that relates to the theme of the podcast, journeys of deepening trust, but that following that, I guess, essence of self, or as I've called it in the past, following spirit, following that inner guidance, that intuition, moving away from that conditioned fear-based behavior.
Mhm.
So would you like to share something around your process or your understanding of that process, either in your life or in your work?
Yeah, so did you say leading with?
Yes, I did. I was calling it, wasn't I, following spirit? And
Following spirit.
when we
Yes,
spoke before, you mentioned
yes,
about the following, and so yeah.
yes. I think this is one of the surprising things that I've discovered as a result of having become a coach, having been thrown into becoming a coach as a result of a really uh, major crisis in my own life. That I don't think I ever get out of bed and think I follow spirit. It's rather that I keep coming back to a place on the inside that's kind of thoughtless, still a still ground on the inside where I can take a rest from how my brain responds to the world, reacts to the world. Yeah. So when 7 years ago my life fell apart and I ended up with PTSD, and my brain was kind of replaying the same handful of thoughts like a needle on an old record. Yeah, this is how the needle jumps and keeps replaying the same thing. My mind was literally stuck like that. And then I had this. I was in EMDR therapy myself. I wasn't an EMDR coach at the time. I was an artist. I was in EMDR therapy, and there were key moments where at some point I realized, wow, my brain is stuck like the needle on a on a record. And then I thought, how weird, if I can look at my brain as it is stuck, then who's the one who's looking?
Mm.
And that's where I realized, okay, my brain is this thing that plays this incredibly stressful movie and triggers all these stressful emotions. Well, I'm not my brain. And that's why I discovered that there's a solid, still, unmoving ground on the inside that I can start to live from. And so to stop identifying with what the brain does, but to start rooting myself in that dimension within. So following spirit for me is therefore it's probably we're talking about the same thing, but for me it really comes from an experience of permanently being confronted with my brain's automated reactions, my body's automated stress reactions, and then always having the ability to return to that dimension on the inside that's completely solid and safe. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then go back into the world from there. And so the body and the brain permanently mediate the world out there to this inner dimension within. Yeah.
Mm.
So I have this, I have to show you this. I have this little
Okay.
acorn on my desk. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the nervous system is very much like the shell of this little acorn. It's designed to keep us physically alive. And now it does this in our 21st century world permanently. It triggers fight, flight, freeze. In traumatic situations, even PTSD, and all to protect our aliveness. And in today's world, that program is no longer useful unless you're really physically under attack. And so what I discovered in that really during that traumatic time is that we can create a different relationship to our own brain to come back to that deeper dimension. And then living from here, we're far more resilient and we can rewire the brain so the reactivity of the nervous system is substantially reduced. Yeah. It doesn't go all the time, just as you watch the latest Trump nonsense also on the news, or horrific climate news, or yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. It's about not allowing ourselves to be governed by fear. And
Yes.
that you were talking earlier as well about that external validation. And I'm not talking about, dismissing all the awful things that are happening in the world, but that triggers our nervous system, doesn't it? So if we can really be able to return to that place within ourselves and take control of control's the wrong word be in that place of resilience, then what's happening in the outside world has less impact on us.
Totally. And I think control of our brain, that's the key. The thing is, unless you've been doing this kind of inner work or been forced to do this kind of nervous system work because your nervous system stopped functioning in a normal way, as in normal in inverted commas, we think we live in the external world directly. We think we suffer because of Gaza, Trump, etc., etc. When we're sitting in our living rooms, let's say in Edinburgh, yeah. So I actually don't suffer Trump. I suffer my brain's internal reality of what my brain tells me about Trump and myself in this world. Yeah. So we don't directly live in the reality out there. We live in the internal reality of our thinking. And this internal reality, the self-talk that the brain gives us, oh my God, climate change, I'm gonna be starving in the future. And then my brain creates these apocalyptic movies. And so emotions come from this internal movie. So what we're really dealing with, first of all, is not Trump or climate change, etc., but our own nervous systems and brain's reaction. And that relationship we can change, and we can take control of it, we can rewire it, so that whole external hard shell is no longer necessary because it doesn't keep us safe in today's world. And then we come back to that dimension, and then we have far more power to actually deal with this stuff out there. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So by living in that present moment.
Which is the hardest thing.
Yes. So
Because, yeah,
yeah, cool.
no.
You talk about that center for vertical revolution or evolution. Is that could you say how that is aligned with that what you were just talking about?
Yeah, so my mission is to bring this kind of awareness and this kind of nervous system work into organizations, and to create an awareness on a more collective scale, of how our nervous systems are currently responsible for much of the slow response, with regard to, let's say, the climate emergency, with the rise of fascism. So many of us, and this is when you work as a coach, as you will know, you see person after person. And whilst there's this individual story, always highly individual stories of suffering and successes, etc., there's always there's a pattern there where you see, oh my God, what happens in each person is actually a pattern.
Yeah.
We tend to get stuck, as you say, in fear, stress, anxiety, underneath which are always negative self-beliefs. I'm powerless, I'm unsafe, I'm not lovable. These are all universal programs that sit in our nervous system, and we think they're personal, and we take it all personally. And when I coach leaders and change makers, this is where the change is getting stuck. This is where our activism is getting stuck. Who am I to stand up and be a leader and make something happen? And I'm not an expert and I'm not professional enough. I need a professional microphone. And yeah, all these fears. And on an unconscious level, that's where our collective power is getting stuck. And people like Mark Zuckerberg and these tech oligarchs, they know how to exploit our limbic system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Limbic capitalism through our screens hijacks our attention, triggers our fight, flight, freeze, distracts us, makes us watch 20 episodes of Netflix instead of reading a book, etc., etc. Yeah, we lose our ability to concentrate, we lose our agency. So when I started thinking about, okay, what could a Center for Vertical Revolution achieve, then it's really about, first of all, bringing that awareness into the collective realm, bringing this nervous system awareness into the collective realm, and finding ways of also making nervous system self-regulation accessible, ideally to people globally. Yeah, I'm at the very beginning of this mission, but I think it matters because currently limbic capitalists are winning not on the level of arguments and information and science and debate, but on the level of the body and the brain. Yeah. They know it's not called Meta. Facebook has not changed its name to Meta for nothing. Meta means, yeah, you're kind of above, you're upstream of everything downstream. Yeah. And whoever is in charge of the brain is in charge of everything else that happens from there. And systems changers, change makers, leaders who really want to make a difference in sustainability and circularity, if they are not able to get upstream of their own brains, then we're already by definition in a disempowered state. And we're already losing the debate between left wing, right wing politics, extractive or regenerative systems, etc., etc. That battle is waged in the limbic brain. And unless and until we learn to address this meaningfully, address the global mental health crisis meaningfully, which is caused by limbic capitalism, yeah, then we're losing this battle. And power comes, we find more agency and power once we learn to take charge of our own brains. We can no longer, I don't think we can no longer afford to just let this program run the show.
Yeah.
And my clients often say, oh my God, this should be taught in primary schools. And I agree. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's that words that we were talking about earlier, unmanipulativable or
Yeah.
unfuckable with is easy to say.
Unfuckable with. Yeah.
To have that level of resilience so that we can be aware of how that I love that phrase limbic capitalism, how
Yeah. That
that
was
is
coined by, not by
influencing us.
me, it's by someone called David. I've forgotten his name now. He wrote a book about the addicted brain. Sorry, I can't remember his name
It's
just now, but
okay.
he coined
I'll
that phrase, limbic capitalism, and I would add to that limbic colonialism because it's really capitalism entering into the brains of children and literally
Mm.
retraining our brains, children and adults, from within, changing the architecture of our brains from within via dopamine, very much so. Yeah, dopamine, we think dopamine is to do with pleasure, but dopamine really signals salience, relevance. So when we scroll and it feels kind of, we want to keep doing this, it's the brain saying, this matters, this matters, this matters. And so it rewires us and it makes it, I don't know about you, but I really have to be so disciplined to read a book these days. I'm a
Yes.
big reader, but I read 3 pages and it's like, I quickly want to check my email or quickly want to check my notifications. It's like, no, I'm going to
Yeah.
read this chapter. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just one simple example of how our brains are rewired. And that this is how we lose our agency.
Yes. And one thing I find which is really interesting, I'll go on my phone to do something,
Mhm.
like check an email or something like that, and I find myself on Facebook, and I'm like, how did that happen?
It's now a
It's
virtual
it's
pathway. This is a pathway in your brain.
yeah,
Trigger response, phone screen, Facebook, phone screen, Guardian. My brain goes to click on the Guardian like 20 times a day, and I'm like, what? I don't, I've read the news. I'm done with it. This is how it works. And now we have AI. Now we hand over even more agency to these tech companies. Now we hand over even our intimate secrets and discuss them with AI. Yeah. And there's been a study by, I think it was MIT, studying the impact of using AI for tasks and handing over our agency completely to AI and how it rewires our brain, how it literally changes the neuroplasticity in our brains. So getting back into the driver's seat of our brains, I think, is a matter of survival. It's not just happiness and more power in our daily lives. That's all fine and well, but it's a battle between who's in
it's
charge.
radical,
Yeah,
isn't it? If we're
who's in
coming back,
charge?
it's radical. If we're coming back to that center place, that essence, that you were speaking about that really beautifully earlier, that of that part of us that exists underneath all those layers of
Yeah,
programming.
yeah. And I think that's the beauty of a crisis, because if life is fine and rosy and we're eating ice cream on the beach, we don't find that inner dimension, that higher self, for want of better words, because life is just okay. We're not forced. But when we're in crisis, when life becomes unmanageable, that's often where we're forced. If we can't change, yeah, like Viktor Frankl said, if you can't change your circumstances, you can only change your own inside. Yeah, you then go within, and that's why I think, on the whole, this meta crisis is a really good thing, because as long as things are still kind of working, we tend to keep muddling through. And this is why I always, when clients come to me and say, I'm hitting rock bottom, I respectfully congratulate them, because that's solid ground. It's the end of muddling. It's the end of enduring what no longer works. Yeah. And often we have to get to that point. People don't reach out to me as long as they, "Oh, I'll reach out to Milena at some point." And then they wait until they hit rock bottom. That's often the case, yeah. So now, we're now globally at rock bottom, where we're hitting rock bottom. And I'm afraid it's so existential that we probably run out of time. But in principle, I think what's happening, this sort of accumulation of toxicity and extractive practices that's now pushing us to the edge, yeah, it's a good thing, because this is the end. It has to come to an end.
Yes.
And if we were collectively able to get to that inner dimension where we're not reactive, where we have access to inner wisdom and also find answers to our biggest questions on the inside, which is so mysterious. Unless we do that, we're operating far below our real capacity. Yeah, I think this is this paradigm shift from the capitalist outside in. I think we talked about that before you started recording. We're programmed to believe happiness and safety and everything comes from the outside. Worthiness comes from the outside. Yeah. My own lovability is determined by someone telling me they love me. To turn that, and that's we need to shop more to find happiness and contentment on the inside. That's the extractive paradigm that's pushing us to the brink, and to turn that around and say, I'm already worthy. I'm already intrinsically enough. I'm already lovable by nature. And by working with the neuroplasticity of the brain, the nervous system can relax. We come back to that inner worthiness and then create from the inside out, from a place of oneness and worthiness and wholeness. Yeah. And that's the paradigm shift we need. Ending this outside in overconsumption. We're pushing us to the brink through sheer overconsumption. And and the engine that limbic capitalists exploit with scientific precision is our negative self-beliefs. I am not enough. I'm not lovable. I'm unworthy. I'm unsafe is part of the survival program in the brain. Because as we said earlier, it makes us hide and play small, and the brain thinks that's great because there's tigers and bears out there. And limbic capitalism, social media, fashion industries, they exacerbate those negative self-beliefs, those dopamine loops. When we scroll, they exacerbate the unhappiness that makes us scroll for hours, the emptiness, the loneliness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they know exactly how to play this program. And most of us don't, and especially systems changes, people trying to fix this mess, don't. And that's where we're behind in this game. And I think we need to make a radical update fast and understand that these self-beliefs have got nothing to do with identity. Yeah, they're just the survival brain. When my brain says, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, it's just chatter designed to keep me alive, no longer works in this world, and come back to this inner dimension where we're already enough, already whole. Yeah. And I think that's exciting. That's why I love that we're in a big planetary crisis, because now there's no more muddling. We have to change.
You've got to stop floundering and just hit that bottom and bounce back up. So what would you suggest to somebody who's aware that they need to do that reprogramming their neural pathways? And to get past that looping or that record being stuck as you experience, what would say be the first step, other than say engaging a coach or a therapist, to really help get themselves out of that looping?
There's already many different pathways out there. For example, Byron Katie. I'm a huge fan of Byron Katie's work. I don't know if you're familiar with her work. Are you?
A bit, yeah.
So she developed these 4 questions that are not designed to shift from negative thinking to positive thinking. They're designed to cut through the illusory nature of thought. Yeah. A thought comes such as, I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, or I'll never make it, I'm always the one who fails, or yeah, that kind of chatter that we all have at some point. Her 4 questions, is it true? Can you know absolutely know for sure that it's true? Often reveals that stressful thought wasn't even true. But we tend to not stop and question our
Mm.
stressful thoughts. We just run with them. And the brain says, you're not lovable. And then we believe it. And it's like, pause. It's a stressful thought. And then how do you feel when you believe that thought? I feel like I'm dying. I feel stressed. I feel lonely. How would you be? Who would you be without the thought, I'm not lovable or whatever? I'd be fine. I just get on with this beautiful day. Yeah. So there's many, Byron Katie is only one way. Buddhism, meditation, nature are all ways to come out of the mind and back into the present moment. But I would say that we now have a much faster doorway that is through the direct work with the nervous system. And this is based on a revolution in neuroscience that still too few people know about, still too few therapists know about, which is therapeutic memory reconsolidation, meaning we now know exactly what needs to happen in the brain for it to unlearn outdated learning. So we grow up, stuff happens, it leaves imprints in our nervous system. Let's say you get bullied at school. Let's say someone spits at you. It takes 1 second to be spat at. Let's say you're 7 years old and your brain makes that mean I'm unworthy. Then there's that shame in the body. And the brain turns that one moment into generalized learning, turns it into a self-belief that then runs your body and life like the software in your computer. So then we're adults and wonder why our lives become unmanageable because our nervous systems run on this outdated software from our childhoods and from our distant Paleolithic ancestors. Yeah, this outdated fight, flight, freeze thing. So in therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we now know how the brain creates this generalized learning, and we know how to specifically target those brain regions where that generalized learning sits. The explicit memory of being spat at sits in a different brain region from the learning. Yeah. And in the coaching that I do, we get down to this deeper level, coaching the unconscious mind, rewiring the brain, updating that program. So then there's that liberation on the inside. And to achieve that deep level of liberation and update, it's possible, but much slower when you try and do it yourself. You can, and I also teach people how to, you can learn how to rewire your own brain, but it's much slower. Even I, as a coach, need another coach to get to that level faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
And people need people, and that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yes.
It's wonderful. I think it's important that even as coaches, we also take ourselves somewhere else, and then needs to be a circle. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. That's really important.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I remember when, um, well, years ago now, being told that, that inner critic wasn't very accurate. They weren't very intelligent because they speak in generalizations. And once I realized it's like, and the way to deal with your inner critic is to get accurate and specific.
Mhm.
Say, so let's say, well, you'll always do things like that, you're really stupid, and you can start saying, well, actually, how about when I did this, that was really clever. And
Exactly.
and you can, um
Exactly.
yeah, so there's different ways of
And
working.
and the inner critic is really, we confuse it with our identity as if that was true. This voice that's talking, saying, oh, you're such a loser, or whatever it may be saying. But it's really an automated program in the brain. The brain has to churn out thoughts, and they're by nature negative because it's designed to focus on negatives and danger in order to keep us alive. And I don't know if you know positive intelligence. Shirzad Shamini calls it the saboteur brain versus the sage brain. And by nature, the percentage in our thinking that's negativity focused is higher than the sage brain chatter that's positive, self-empowering, potential focused. And so if, let's say, the majority of your thinking is saboteur brain driven, negative, if it's up to 50, 60%, you're heading into depression. If it's 70 or 80%, you're really losing the will to live. And if it's 90 or 100%, that's where people really lose the will to live. That's where you've lost the sage, the self completely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the bigger the saboteur, the bigger the percentage of the saboteur brain chatter, the more unmanageable your life becomes. And you lose this higher capacity, this deeper capacity of your sage or self. Yeah. And the shocking thing is, or the really important thing to understand is that none of this has to do anything to do with the external world. This is all internal. So people come to me often with 80, 90% negative chatter, if not more. And then they realize, wow, this is internal, which is such great news because over Gaza and Trump and climate, we don't have much power as individuals. Yeah, we can't change other people and the external world in this moment, but we can fundamentally change this internal world. So in my work, by working with updating the self-beliefs, updating the brain, releasing negative memories, the amount of time you spend in saboteur brain-driven thinking shrinks down to about 25%. That's really useful because we need that voice that says, Tanya or Milena, you need to pay attention to that deadline or pay that bill or watch out. Yeah, we need that voice and it'll always be there. And the fight, flight, freeze will always be there. But then 75% of your thinking comes from self-empowered thinking rooted in this inner safety and calm. And then you, instead of stress, anger, anxiety, guilt, you have clarity, calm, empathy, curiosity, courage. Did I say love? Yeah.
Mm.
And that's when you're really self-empowered. That's where you then meet that external world from a most self-empowered place. And it's that shift really that I help my clients make that and then really live from here, from this sage perspective. And that's
Beautiful.
life-changing.
Yes,
Mm.
yes, it is to be able to live from that place of empowerment and not worrying, not allowing the past to influence you, and not allowing worrying about the future.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I do this every day. I've practiced this for years. I'm really good at getting myself out of saboteur and into the sage ever faster and spend far less time in sage. And I also have days where I get triggered, yeah, where I just hide under the duvet and don't want to get out, and that's okay too. Yeah, it's not about toxic positivity, but it's about knowing, even these days, even when I'm 100% triggered, I can still at the same time feel that solid, quiet ground of my higher self. Whilst I'm triggered, I'm not identified with it. And that's a really interesting experience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've experienced things like that. You can still, you become the observer.
Exactly. You start to witness. You start to witness your own brain and you start to witness the world. And if your inner safety and inner calm no longer depends on or can get disturbed by the external world, that's a completely different way of being in life because you always know no matter what happens, I can always come back to this. When I get overwhelmed by climate anxiety, I have moments when, yeah, there's been this emergency report released by the British government, which is so apocalyptic when you look at it. And the nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, which means the nervous system wants to move us away from reading that report. This is where climate activism is getting stuck, because the nervous system moves us away from those facts. Yeah, it goes, I can't bear this. I'm gonna scroll on my phone instead. Yeah, or watch
Mm.
Netflix. And with this different nervous system awareness, it's possible to look those facts in the eye without getting triggered. Yeah. And knowing that whatever happens, I can always come back to this. That's an incredibly powerful place to be in. So what I was going to say, so when climate anxiety in my body gets triggered, when my brain plays these apocalyptic visions of the future, I always come back. And I know that whatever comes, whatever situation in life, I can come back to that safe ground on the inside.
And that reminds me of, I think it's a Zen expression, isn't it? It's always we begin again. And it
Mm.
is being able to stop and just and
Yeah.
come back to that place, but
I-
learning to establish it as well.
And I think that's probably our main job, or I regard this all day long. That's my task. My task is not clients, my business, raising children, or da 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 da. My task is first and foremost to make that movement. No matter what I deal with in my 3D world, to first of all always come back to that. And so the external world is almost then becomes like a playground to train that muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it starts to constellate itself around that as well.
Mm, mm. And it means no longer being caught up in the illusion that I suffer because of the external world. I suffer because of my internal world. And over my internal world, I have far more power. Yeah, I can take charge. And no matter what happens on the outside, I can come back to that on the inside.
So
Yeah, and I think this should be taught in primary schools.
yes, totally.
That would be the paradigm shift. Imagine if every human being on this earth were able to make this shift.
Yeah. I believe there are some places that teach mindfulness and you know, I'm not sure how much of it is going on, but there definitely has been a move, and some of the forest schools and nurseries and things. I think
I
they
think
all play a
all
part
of that,
in that.
all of that is absolutely fantastic, and it only goes so far as long as it doesn't really make changes in the nervous system.
Yeah. Yes.
When you're triggered, you're triggered.
Yes. That's yes.
We all know that feeling, yeah?
Uh-huh.
When all of a sudden it's just like on a scale from 0 to 10, if 0 is relaxed and 10 is maximum stress, and yeah, 10 out of 10, mindfulness is out of the window. Yeah. Unless, like I said earlier, with a lot of practice, you can learn that even at 10 out of 10, you can remember, I'm not my brain. My brain is doing something right now. First of all, I need to get my nervous system down to 0 again, calm my nervous system before I can actually address what's happening in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a lot of work to do.
I know, it's exciting.
It is exciting, but and before we complete, I would like to ask you about the pilgrimages that
Ah,
you do. So I'm seeing, this is the journeys of deepening trust, a kind of it's our pilgrimage through life in some way. And yeah, I've noticed that you do these pilgrimages, and so I'm curious about if you'd like to share a little bit about them, but also what inspired you to start running these pilgrimages?
Uh, I started walking the first Camino Frances after my life had completely fallen apart and after COVID. And I've also traveled all my life. I've lived a very adventurous life and have always experienced that the less I carry physically, the less I'm attached to comfort, the more I let go of comfort, the more I surrender to what is, the more life comes to meet me. And so when I walk the Camino, that's a really beautiful, exceptional experience because you can literally, when you walk for 800 kilometers, you can literally only carry a couple of t-shirts and a toothbrush and socks and some washing powder. I can't carry much. My back won't tolerate much. So then you leave everything that is your normal routine, your titles, your job, everything behind. And then you're on that path that has been walked by pilgrims for over 1,000 years. And people from all over the world come together. And nobody on the Camino says, what do you do? And then you talk about work. At some point that comes up, but it's not the first thing. The first question is, why are you here? Because everybody, most people, not everybody, but most people go to and walk the Camino because something big is happening in their lives and they're grappling with it and they're looking for meaning and they're looking for direction. They're carrying pain. Many people have lost someone, children have died, or partners, or cancer, or retirement hits and you don't know where you're going. Yeah. So all these people walk together. And then there's this incredible camaraderie between total strangers, this beautiful experience of, wow, this is like family. And then you realize, whilst it feels like this is not normal life, you realize how abnormal our normal lives are, how abnormal it is that we sit on an airplane next to someone for like 15 hours and we never even talk and say hello. Yeah. Or we sit in offices and look at our screens for 12 hours every day. It's not normal. We have created an abnormal life. And on the Camino, we can tap into something more archetypal or simple. And also then walking the Camino, I witnessed how many people walk the Camino and did get a lot of transformation, inner transformation, but a lot of people also arrived in Santiago and were still carrying internal baggage. And because I'm a coach in conversation, I see these things, yeah, and I also happen to know exactly what to do to drop that internal baggage. And that's where the idea was born, that I could combine this in itself transformational journey with the most powerful transformational coaching tools we have in the 21st century and say, let's walk together. And inevitably along the journey, topics come up, people cry, sit there and try and work something out. And then to be able to say, okay, let's step off the path. Let's do an hour of coaching, like nervous system rewiring. And then we continue walking. And so to combine this journey with this inner nervous system work, to me, is like the epitome of transformation and liberation and coming back to aliveness. Coming back, finding your zest for life again. We were all most of us, so drained of aliveness, yeah, because our lives have become so dry. And yeah, this is how this idea was born.
Beautiful. And that brings in that vibrancy, which I think is
Yeah,
the word I would use to describe you if I was to use one.
thank you. But
Yeah.
then, of course, people come home after this incredibly alive and vibrant experience, and then you're back in normal life. And that's
Mm.
like, whoa, you've changed, but your life hasn't changed. And that creates a lot of how do you integrate that now? And
Yes.
that's where on the Camino say, that's where the real Camino begins, when the journey to Santiago ends. Yeah.
Mm.
When you walk the path, that inner path at home. And
Yes.
then I also offer to support people then through online coaching, that continued journey at home, and integrating that aliveness and bringing that back into our workplaces, etc., etc.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why that integration is so important, whether it's something like that or people go on retreats or whatever processes they may go away and do and have a wonderful time and learn a lot about themselves and then come back and to really have that it takes a lot of strength to because if you've changed
I
and everything's
know.
the same.
I know. It's
it,
challenging.
yeah.
And if you're in a relationship and one person walks the Camino and they come back, the relationship needs a fundamental update. Yeah? And that can create friction. And it's not necessarily easy. Yeah. And I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary we find ways to connect to that aliveness and from there transform whatever it is we're doing in life. And it's a challenge. It's not just a walk in the park. The Camino is not a walk in the park. It's not for the faint-hearted. I mean, it's like and physically so demanding. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I would something I'd love to do some form of walking pilgrimage at some
Mhm.
point.
It's a hero's journey, yeah. I'm sure
Yeah.
you know the hero's journey. There's that call, and that you feel that call on the inside. And then the hero has to decide, am I going to answer this call? I'd love to walk the Camino one day. There's that desire on the inside. Love to do coaching. I'd love to become a coach. I'd love to set up XYZ one day. And then are you going to go on the journey? And when you decide to answer the call and go on the journey, there will be a dragon, there will be an abyss, you will struggle, you will be on your knees. But then there's also transformation and a treasure. And then you come back transformed. That's the
Yeah.
hero's journey. And the Camino and also my coaching, it's a hero's journey. And the question is, do you hear the call? And if you hear the call, are you going to answer it? Are you going to go? And this is how people either create a life full of regrets or no regrets.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a driving tour around Europe in 22, and nearly everywhere I went intersected with the Camino. And it was like I'd stop at a campsite, and it was the Camino path
Wow.
would be. I'd be like, I think I'm being given all these hints that I need to
Yeah.
come back. Um,
Yeah, that's how it
and
works.
that.
But the hints are only there for those who already have that on the inside. You wouldn't notice any hints if that wasn't already something on your inside, a certain longing and desire present in you.
Yeah.
Somebody else will have driven along the same route and not felt that calling.
Mhm. Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
exciting stuff.
So like the last thing I'm going to ask you, though I feel in many ways you've already answered it in what you've said, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. What sort of news story would you like to see to start emerging in the world? You know, we've hit this rock bottom, but in the world, in the collective, um, how would you, and I know this is again projecting into the future, right? But um how would you like to see things start to unfold?
Well, for me, it's not so much about concrete outcomes. I mean, obviously, the concrete outcome of stopping the fossil fuel industry, etc., etc., stopping fascism. These are really urgent topics. but they hinge on our personal capacity. And we know also from neuroscience that 80% of our ability to have greater well-being, more success and impact hinge on external processes. So the majority of our agency is getting stuck on the inside. And what I would like to see is a collective shift, realizing we're not getting stuck. The positive shift we want to see in the world is not getting stuck in external structures as much as on the inside. And if we made that one shift, if every person could theoretically liberate themselves as much as, for example, my clients do, then we could fix this mess we're in. But too many of us are stuck inside our own brains, that inner saboteur chatter. I'm not good enough. I'm not an expert. I need a professional mic. Who am I to do a podcast? Who am I to give a TED talk? Who am I to phone someone up and say this is bullshit? Who am I to demonstrate? Yeah. Who am I? Yeah. We're getting stuck on the inside. If we unlock that, that would be a revolution. It will be an absolute revolution. And it's not like I'm talking about something brand new. Yes, the rewiring the brain is new, knowing specifically how to update the brain. And that's a huge paradigm shift that's coming just in time. But much of what we're talking about here is ancient, it's timeless.
Yes.
We've just had that catastrophic 100 and 150, 200 years of capitalism, colonialism, really literally abusing nature, women, children, resources, and now pushing us to the brink. And yeah, the shift I would like to see is for everybody to come into maximum agency by managing their own nervous systems in a way that they're no longer held back by their inner saboteur.
Beautiful.
That will be a revolution.
Yes.
That's what I'm here for.
Yes.
I'm here for this revolution.
The new revolution.
Yeah.
Which won't be on Facebook.
Well, hey, I have met, didn't we find each other through Facebook?
Yeah.
There you go. So
I was playing on that Gil Scott Heron song, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised."
yes,
So that's what I was thinking of when I said that.
it's definitely an internal thing.
Yeah.
How wonderful. Thank you so much.
Well, thank
for reaching
you. I've
out.
really enjoyed our chat,
Yeah, me too.
both recorded and unrecorded.
Yay.
Thank you ever so much,
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Milena, for agreeing to be my guest on this podcast, and sending you all who are watching and listening much love from my heart to yours.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.